This is Mrs. Naslund, and today we'll be doing Unit 6, Lesson 3, Measure Volume and Capacity. Our learning targets for today are, I can explore metric unit of volume and capacity, and I can measure volume and capacity using metric units. So when we're looking at volume and capacity, it's similar to area, but we add another dimension, right? Because we're looking at a 3D shape. So it says the basic unit for measuring volume is cubic meters. This is a cubic centimeter. So we look at this. If we were just finding the area of this little square, we would do base times height. But since we're finding the depth as well, we're going to do base times height times depth. We're going to go down in one. So we have to multiply those three things together to get the area of this cubic meter. So you'll see that before when we changed, it was units of 10. It would get 10 smaller or 10 bigger, but now it's 1,000 because it's cubic. But if you think about it, we did 10 times 10, give 100, times 10 more, we get 1,000. So it's 1,000 times smaller, 1,000 times smaller, 1,000 times smaller each time, 1,000 times 1,000 times smaller. And if we're going the other direction, it would be 1,000 times bigger, 1,000 times 1,000 times bigger, and so forth. So how many centimeters are equal to 1 meter? Okay. So we'll pretend this is our 1 meter again, and we're going to centimeters. So we count our steps. We've got 1, 2 steps. So again, I'd write my 1 meter, and then I go my 2 steps, 1, 2, which gives me 2 zeros, which gives me 100. So there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Now the question is, how many cubic centimeters do you think we need to make a cubic meter? Now remember what I said earlier. If we were just finding the area, we would do 100 times 100. Okay, but we're finding the volumes. We have to do 100 times 100 times 100. When we multiply 100 times 100 times 100, I always like to count my zeros. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I do my 1 times my 1 times 1, which is 1, and then I add my 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We end up with 1,000,000 cubic centimeters that take up 1 cubic meter. All right. Now, what patterns do you see in the metric units of volume in the chart? So if we look here, what patterns do you see? If you said that the chart goes up or goes down 1,000 times each time, you're right. Instead of when we were just doing basic measurements, it went up by 10 or down by 10. And then when we did area, it went up by 100 or down by 100. When we do volume, it's going to go up by 1,000 or down by 1,000. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this problem and see if we can figure it out. It says, each student at Leakin School has a coat locker. Each locker is 1 meter high, 3 decimeters deep, and 5 decimeters across. How can you find the total space inside the student locker? Now there's one little trick here I want you to look at. This one is in meters, and the other two are in decimeters. And we can't multiply when they're in different units. So the first thing we have to do is move our meters to our decimeters. Okay? Once we've done that, then we should be able to multiply our height and we can multiply the height and the depth and the length across. We've multiplied those three numbers. We should get the volume of that locker. So I think that's what this is going to say, is that we'd have to first convert them all to be the same, yep, and then multiply them to figure it out. So let's figure out what that volume is. First, we've got to move meter to decimeter. So I'm going to use my little chart. Here's my meter spot. And we want to go to decimeters. So we're going down 1 step. So again, if I have my 1, I'm going to go 1 step, add a spot for my 0. It's 10. So there's 10 decimeters high by 3 decimeters deep by 5 decimeters. So 10 times 3 times 5. 10 times 3 is 30. And then we have to do 30 times 5, which would be 150 cubic decimeters, right? Because it's the volume. So instead of saying square, we're going to say cubic decimeters. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the measure and capacity of a liter. And the liter is what we use to measure like liquids. And I want you to notice something about our chart here. Instead of this being meters now, it's changed to liters. And each of our prefixes have stayed the same. We still have deci, centi, milli, deca, hecto, kilo. The prefixes have stayed the same, but the ending part has changed. So now we have deciliter, centiliter, milliliter, decoliter, hectoliter, and kiloliter. Okay, so our chart still works the same, except we're going to add liter to the end. So let's go ahead and see if we can do some of these problems. It says, Mrs. Lee's class cut a 2-liter plastic bottle in half to make a 1-liter jar. So this is our 1-liter jar. They marked the outside to show equal parts. How many milliliters of water fit in the jar? All right, so we know that we have 1 liter is the jar, and we want to go to milliliters. So again, I think of my chart here. I'm going to draw my 1 for my 1 liter that we have. And let's count how much it takes to get to milliliters. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add 3, start from my decimal, that would have been there. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, add those all as zeros. So we can say that there are 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter jar. Now, how many of these jars will fill a kiloliter container? Explain why. All right, so for this one, we have a 1 kiloliter container, right? And we want to move that and figure out how many liters fit in it. So we're at the kiloliter. We want to get all the way down to our base unit of liters. Let's count our steps. 1, 2, 3. So we have to go 3 steps. 1, 2, we should probably draw it 1, 2, 3. So we have 1,000 liters will fit into 1 kiloliter. Or 1,000, jars or liter jars will fit into that 1 kiloliter. All right, let's try one more here. It says, here's a picture of a cubic centimeter. If you could fill 1 cubic centimeter with water, you would have 1 milliliter of water. How many cubic centimeters of water will Mrs. Lee's jars hold? Explain why. Okay, so how many cubic centimeters of water will Mrs. Lee's jar hold? Explain why. Well, we know right here it says that 1 cubic centimeter of water would be 1 milliliter of water. So we know that 1 centimeter is equal to 1 milliliter right here. And the first thing we want to do is convert it to liters, or know how many liters there are. So if we have 1 liter, we know that we have 1,000 milliliters. So we figured that out right here. And knowing that, we're able to say, okay, if I have 1,000 milliliters and it's the same as cubic centimeters, then we're going to have 1,000 cubic centimeters would equal that 1 liter amount. All right. Lastly, how many liters of water would fill a cubic decimeter? Holy cow. So, all right, so we're going to look at here. Here's our liters, and we want to know how many cubic decimeters it would be. So we look over here, and we know that the deciliters is right here, and it tells us that basically it equals 1 liter of water would fit into that space. Let's see if we're right. Yep, 1 liter. So today we talked about how to measure capacity and volume. We had a chance to practice with it. On your homework and remembering, you'll also have a chance to continue your practice. Great work.